Hey everyone, we have Jessica Berger on today, who went from renting a room in a room by room rental to now owning the properties and doing the same thing. So between owning a few properties, selling them, and now owning another one, she's able to travel all over the world to do her job and do room by room rentals. So Jessica, welcome aboard.
Thank you for having me, Paul. Good to be here.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about your journey in real estate and how you got started.
Sure. So I started in real estate in 2020. Actually, COVID kind of grounded me from doing a lot of travel. I'm a physical therapist and I started out kind of doing travel physical therapy. And when COVID kind of grounded me, I was like, I got some free time. So I started to learn where to invest, and real estate's kind of where I landed. So I was renting one room out of a five-bedroom house, doing shared living with roommates, which I personally enjoy. I love living with people. And as I started to get into real estate, I looked for my first property and I was looking for maybe a duplex or triplex. And I had an offer and was under contract with the property, and then it ended up falling through. And once that fell through, two of the properties, the property that I lived in, and then this property was like part of a complex where there was 30 of these kind of townhomes, and most of them were rented out room by room. Well, two of them came up for sale, and I was like, I know all about these properties, and kind of looked into it, ran the numbers, and it made a lot of sense to buy. So I ended up buying the one I lived in and then one across the parking lot as well. And that's where my real estate journey really started. I continued to live with the girls that I was living with. I just became their new landlord. And then the other house, I continued to rent out room by room. And I had to fill that when I bought it, I had to fill a few of the rooms. So I had bought that in the end of summer 2021. And within 3 months, COVID had kind of, let go, and I was back on the travel field. And so 3 months later, was off to Arizona and managing these two properties from Arizona. So the house that I lived in, really no issues with that. It's a lot easier to manage a house of five people when you live in it because you know what's kind of going on. And then the house across the parking lot, I had some issues with girls getting along, being in shared living quarters. But being in Arizona, I just had processes in place and people I could contact when things went wrong. So if, a girl needed her toilet lid replaced, and I was able to just call on somebody that already had set up to be able to go over there and do that for me. I did have some issues of them getting along and having to let a couple of the girls go and leave. And that was definitely stressful from doing that from out of state. But again, I had people back here that I could have go and deliver notices and things like that. So having that process in place was super helpful. The other thing that I really liked that I would recommend for anybody doing kind of out of state or maybe unscheduled events is having everything set up on auto pay. So any of your bills that you do, if you're gone out of state, a lot of things going on, then having something set up on auto pay just eases that mind. And if you ever need to dispute something later, you can, but at least you're not getting the electric set up, shut off on your renters.
Yeah, definitely. So you hit on a really key point here, and that is having your systems in place before you travel, people that you can contact to fix things, anything that you need to run your real estate business, you need somebody to do when you're gone, right? So
Yeah. Hmm.
yeah. So before we jump into your next property, let's go over a little bit more about you. So you're a physical therapist. What else do you have going on in your busy life?
Yeah, so I'm a physical therapist primarily. I work in a hospital here in Ohio, and I also have a second job with an international disaster response team. So I just started that last year, and at any given time, I could be called to leave the country within like 36 hours. I also have turned some of the equity from my properties into private money lending, and I'm looking at doing some trading as well.
Awesome. All right, so let's move on. If I'm right, you sold those two properties that you just talked about, right?
Yes, I did. So while I was in Arizona, Yeah, you get some of those stories with shared living where two girls just were not getting along. And no matter kind of what I did or tried to do, they couldn't get along. And it involved poop and mangoes and calling the police and somebody being barricaded in the apartment. And it was like, one of my first properties, and like I'm just like, wow, like this is crazy. Like having try to have people live together. It's one thing when you live there because you can manage that and you know those people, but when you put like people who don't know each other together in a house, like things can just go wrong. So, I was literally thinking while I was in Arizona, I was like, man, I don't know if I would do another like shared living property again. Like this is a lot of work from the people side of things. And this was the time where I was just applying and deciding that I was going to join the international disaster response team. And I'm like, man, that's going to be hard to manage, like from countries away. And so, right about that time, the Lord dropped a little offer into my lap to sell both of those properties. And at first, I was like, well, I don't really want to sell the one I live in. Like, I really like where I live. It's a great setup for house hacking and shared living, but I really don't want the other one anymore. But the offer was that I had to sell both. So I talked with the buyers and kind of came to some terms. I was able to ask for a little bit more because I did live in one, whereas all the other units in the complex were pretty much they were all investor owned. So this big buyer wanted to buy the entire complex. But because I lived in one, I was able to ask for a good chunk of money over, saying that, hey, I literally have only owned these for 6 months and I live in one. So it's going to take a little bit more basically for me to sell. And we were able to agree on some terms to make it worth it for both of us. And the whole selling process took probably 7 months, 7 or 8 months, just because it was a bigger purchase and there were a lot of owners involved. But I was able to sell those properties for about a $40,000 profit just
Very
after.
nice.
So that was super great.
Yeah, that's a nice return over 6 months. So, what did that lead you to from there?
Yeah, so taking on the international disaster response job, I was like, I definitely need a little bit more low maintenance of a property. I no longer wanted an HOA because even though I was on the board of this HOA, I was like, I can see how this can be not so good for landlords. Um, and so I decided that I was going to kind of I knew I wanted to buy another house because I don't want to pay rent. I know that we don't build wealth by paying rent. But I went to a real estate conference here in Ohio and I met some now business partners who talked to me a lot about private money lending. So I took what profits I made from that sale and also a good chunk of what I'd already had saved as well for the next property, and I turned that into a private money lending deal.
And did that come back clean? Came back on
Yes, I
time?
actually just got it. I got it back last week, or I got I got what I wanted back out of it last week, and I actually left some money in for them to continue using. I just took out what I wanted to get back because I want to try to do a little bit more short-term private money lending deal. This
Okay.
private money lending deal was a 12% over 6 months. And yeah, everything went super smoothly. And it's literally about as passive as you can get. Like you sign some papers and you give them your money and then you just wait for it to come back. So I was very comfortable doing that while being overseas. And literally, I've been in Turkey, Zambia, Armenia. I've been in like 7 or 8 countries since I started this. And for me, that's what I need for my peace of mind, and my flexibility is just a lot more hands off, but still being able to invest in real estate.
Okay, so how would you say owning properties and running the numbers to see if it's a good deal helped you transferring into private money lending?
Yeah, it's very, very similar. So if you know how to analyze and run numbers on a property that you're thinking about buying, you really do the same thing that you do for a private money lending deal. You analyze the property, you understand, loan to value ratio, what you would be getting back on this property. So a couple things I had to learn was asking for the private money lender's track record. So getting a full history of what they've done, how they've done, to kind of build that credibility for them, as well as oh, the other thing. Knowing just like the paperwork process. Like now I had to read over more like promissory notes and things like that. But it was pretty smooth and I was very comfortable with the business partners who I started with.
Good. Um, and what's next? What are you into right now?
Yeah, so I I'm still have my international disaster response job, so flexibility is very, very big for me. And I want to do a shorter term private money lending deal with like a 1 to 3 month turnaround, maybe 15% interest. And I've also gotten into Forex and futures trading because it's something you can kind of do whenever you have the time. And it's something you can kind of be in and out of, like before I would have to leave the country. So, yeah, never thought I would be here, but I've only started it for the past few weeks and maybe it won't pan out, but I definitely think it's worth a shot and giving it a try.
Okay, cool. And are you owning the house that you sit in right now?
Oh, yes. Good point. Yes. So last year, at the end of last year, I was like, man, my biggest goal by the end of this year is I gotta stop paying rent because I had sold the houses, both my two houses at the end of 2022. So last year I was mostly renting because I was in and out of the country so much. I was just like, I don't have a chance to like look yet. But then I had like a month where I was home and I was like, okay, I'm gonna start looking. So I got back into the market, got a good feel for it, and then I got sent to Armenia. And so while I was in Armenia, like the second day I was there, I was still kind of trying to keep track of the housing market, and a house popped up on the market, and I was like, "This looks great." So I had my realtor and one of my best friends go look at the house, and basically bought the house from Armenia. So having people again in place that I could trust and count on, they sent me a video walkthrough of the house and I did the home inspection and appraisal and everything from Armenia. I was able to review all those documents. And by the time I got home, I only had like 3 days and I had a house bought. So it is definitely possible to do from far away, even other countries. Sometimes you just have to work through a few things. Like my lender's website like wouldn't open in Armenia for whatever legal restrictions. So we had to find a different way, but there's always a way to do something. So yeah, I bought this house in November and I had it like listed for roommates within a week and a half, and within 3 days of my listing, I already had both of my spare bedrooms filled. So I'm back to house hacking and it's wonderful. Again, I love living with people and my roommates are wonderful and that's covering more than my mortgage and my electricity utilities combined. So
Awesome.
financially it's a very good thing, but it's for me it's also about providing a good place for people to live because I know what it's like to go travel and not know anybody and not know where to live. So I'm able to use my house as a missional way to do that, to provide a good place for somebody to live. So I'm very excited to do that too.
So what are some of the things you've learned from your first room by room rental to this one that you may have changed?
Yeah, I think that I would probably not do room by room rental again. I think I will always do house hacking in some way, shape, or form in a place that I live because I feel that I can manage my own household pretty well. The only other options that maybe I would do for house hacking is if a group of people wanted to move into the house and they wanted to do it that way, that would be totally fine. But I also would require them to all be on one lease. So that way I don't have to go after every single person or like one person out of the group who isn't paying. But if they wanted to move in, they could all pay lower rent, but I would just do one lease per house. And that way, they have to be accountable to each other for paying the rent. And then it safeguards me from having to kind of go after one person out of the house.
And I guess that way you could put all the utilities on them as well, since it's under one lease, somebody I would think at least. So
Yeah.
yeah, awesome. Um, where do you see your investing journey going from here? Do you want to keep buying more properties, or are you going to sit back and look into the private money lending a little bit more?
I'm gonna do a little bit of both.
Okay.
I want to do a short-term deal, and then with properties, I I'm still watching the market every day. I think I'm a little bit in a a state where I'm just kind of seeing what I want to do with my money. Do I want to spend 20% on a investment property, or do I want to wait a year and then move and have another owner occupied rate by being able to put down like 5 or 10% if the numbers make sense and scale that way? So I'm debating, I'm deciding on what exactly I want to put my cash, my capital into right now.
Awesome. Um, I would say, as far as your investing journey goes and making a little extra money on the side in any of your investing, how have that given you the freedom to be able to do what you want in your life?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's if we can think about it in numbers, like it's just I value my I think of things in regards to how much time it costs me. So let's say, for example, I make $300 in my physical therapy job a day. Well, if I have a rental that makes me $1,200 out of the year, then I just gained 40 days. 40 days of free time that I don't have to work.
$12,000, right?
1,000. Did
Yeah.
I say?
Yeah.
Yeah, I need my calculator. But like that's how I see that in my brain. I'm like, I would have to be working every single day in order to make this. Well, if I just made an investment that's now making me this amount of money, I just freed up however many days of the month that I can go do more of my mission work and I can go do more international missions. So I think when we picture it in terms of time value, like, wow, I just like gave myself whatever might be important to you, whether that be to go on vacation or whether that to be home and spend time with your kids. For me, it's to be able to go abroad and serve. Um, that time that it gives you back, I think is pretty precious.
Awesome. So, Jess, if anybody wanted to reach out to you with questions, how could they contact you?
Yeah, you can reach out to me via email would be the best way. It's jessburger17@gmail.com.
Awesome. And final question. In your free time when you're watching YouTuber podcasts, what is your favorite channel to watch?
Oh, that's a great question. It changes a little bit. When I was really learning about real estate, house hacking, that journey, I really loved One Rental at a Time. Michael Zuber gives a lot of just practical advice and not a lot of fluff. I also loved Matt the Mortgage Guy. He answered a lot of mortgage questions, and he does a lot of live Q&A that
Yeah,
you can watch. Now I'm really into more of I don't know his name actually, but there's it's through the Anderson Clint Coons property group. Um, and it's a lot more about like structuring your
like
business.
corporate structure and such. Yeah.
Mhm.
All
So
right. Cool. Okay, Jess. Well, thanks for coming on and sharing your story with us.
yeah, thanks for having me.
Yep.